Greetings chat. It's me, local stream mascot and fellow comrade, Tippers. Here to tell you that your continued support not only provides us treats, but lets our human and your streamer continue to spread the good word of Karl Barks.
Chat, it's me, Evie. If you don't subscribe, my human is not going to give me snacks or belly rubs. If you subscribe using your Prime sub, I can be forever immortalized with this Gremloe emote.
So subscribe today for only $4.99 or for free using your Twitch Prime sub. Or your girlfriend's Prime sub, or, let's be honest, your girlfriend's boyfriend's Prime sub. Num 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 treats.
Ah yes, motherfucking treats.
Subscribe to Gremloe.
I have a take on the Star Wars movies that you're probably gonna hardline disagree with it.
Uh-oh, here we go.
You ready?
I'm listening. Okay, we're ending this conversation. Have a nice day.
I'm better in a classroom because I'll need to. Oh my god, that is a cute doggy.
He says hello.
He says hello? All right, well, let me.
He's really wanting our attention right now.
Well, here, we'll do doggy introductions. We got the fat one, and the bigger one walked away.
So we got a palm.
Yeah, we got two palms, but one has a recessive gene, and most like palms are like, you know, at their heaviest like 10, 12 pounds.
Yeah.
He's 28.
Damn.
Yeah. He's got a recessive gene because before palms were bred down, they were German Spitz, and they were that big.
Okay, now the other dog wants to say hello.
Oh,
Hello,
there's
buddy.
two of them. Oh my goodness.
It's good to see you, buddy.
Well, what I kind of wanted to do was pick your brain a little bit. You and I didn't really get to talk too much when we were both on the Hippy Dippy stream, but
Sure.
I got the sense that you do consider yourself a like someone who is on the right, or at least a Republican.
Right wing, yes. Republican, like tacitly. I think the Republican Party has done some things recently that can, like, if you will, align the forces of change to make it a far more positive force in the world. But on the other side of that is that it's opened the door to also a lot of negative factors. And so I'm not bought into the regard that it's like, all right, I'm a Republican, you know, do or die kind of thing.
Sure.
But I believe that the Republican Party is in a fight to be something that could be better or could be worse. And I'm going to jump into that fight, and I'm going to like try to steer it in a direction I align. People have kind of asked, like, why don't you do that for the Democrats? And I don't see the same fight happening in the Democrats. There absolutely is like the liberals versus the progressives, but the liberals don't have any kind of doctrine whatsoever. And I don't like the rhetoric is just keep, steady the ship. I'm like, guys, the ship is sinking.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so my problem with like the liberals is they don't have like any kind of coherent doctrine. This is going to sound a little cringe to your audience probably, but I'm going to put it in this regard and then I'll sell it out later.
Okay.
The right-wing populists have the right rhetoric, but they don't have anyone who's leading them into a way that actually I find suitable. I'll put it this way. They say the right things and they claim to have the right ideals, but when the execution comes, they kind of fuck it up.
Could you maybe like give me any specifics of the rhetoric within right-wing populists? Because when I listen to right-wing populists, I'm not hearing a whole lot of policy.
There's a lot of levels where you're kind of right, because let's be honest here. Like my biggest issue with a lot of populism in general is that it's not a policy-driven thing. It's very reactionary. It's very forced, and I think that's from both the left and the right. It's something they have in common. These are people that are not part of the establishment, that don't run the systems, who are upset with the systems, and they're like, "Hey, look, we want change. We want something different." And I think most people on the left and the right agree that the system no longer serves the body politic in a general regard. The left-wing populists largely want the social democratic model or some further form of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I like overly like, oh, it's disgusting. How dare you? I don't think it works all that well personally. If we need to get into that, we can. But also, like, I've got some moral frameworks that I think actually don't align with that. The right-wing populists have a lot of the rhetoric that doesn't equate to policy that well. And this is actually one of the things that I really want to throw a wrench at them for. But as far as the claims, I absolutely agree with them. The right and the left wing populists do agree that the balance of power economically has gotten too far out of hand between like the rich and the poor and the working class, right?
Okay.
Both sides agree on that. The difference is how they want to solve it. The left largely wants to, capital gains tax, basically do wealth redistribution, which I get it, but I don't think that solves the problem. I think it's literally just it's acknowledging the problem and then trying to get out of the bag. What the right wants to do, whether you agree with this or not, is that they believe that fundamentally, whenever we opened up the United States overall to the rest of the world, particularly the undeveloped world, is that it completely destroyed the balance of power because we outsourced most of our middle class jobs out to the rest of the world so that they could industrialize and develop, particularly the Chinas and Indias of the world. But at the same time, the super capitalists of our communities have now been able to go in and be the main financiers for that development. So they're getting all the riches and rewards of capitalism because this is what it's really, really good at. It's good at economic development. It's good at build out. But whenever it's more economical to offshore your job that keeps you in a stable position so that you're not worrying about your health care, where you're not worrying about that, you get really upset. You get really pissed. And what a lot of them are in favor of is like, hey, look, we don't want to overtax the rich to the point where we just wipe them out. What we want to do is we want to reset the balance of power. We don't want to be trading with the Chinas and Indias of the world because we think that harms American citizens. And we think that it fundamentally changes the balance of power economically in the United States that makes it an unfavorable advantage. And it's not socially responsible. And that's the thing that I really want them to hit on. Republicans, conservatives believe in social responsibility. Now, that takes a lot of different forms, and the left and the right do not agree on what the fuck that is. But in a general sense, at least for me, you know what? I don't have a problem with you being rich. But there is a point where I'm like, yo, that's not cool. Do you remember the Schreckle guy? I can't remember what his name was exactly. He was the guy a couple years back. He went to Congress because he pissed everybody off, where he got a patent for...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he got a patent for a life-saving drug, right? Really helps people. Increased it by like 700%. That is not socially responsible. Yes, you can do that, but it's not the values that I openly believe in. Is that, look, if you have power and if you have power, I respect that. You've done something, probably you've done something to get there. But on the other side of that is I'm going to hold you to a higher standard. I'm going to be like, all right, cool. Make sure that your folks are paid well. Make sure that, there is some kind of level where you're not overly fucking them. It's the whole used car salesman dynamic, if you will, is that if you know that you can take a guy to the cleaners, doesn't mean you should. And that's the one thing that I disagree with the libertarian right is that I'm weird because I'm this amalgamation of the libertarian and radical right to where I have the principles of the radical right that you should be socially and morally responsible. But I have it in the libertarian right, and as far as look, you don't go around beating the living shit out of people because we believe in liberalism and freedom and responsibility. But you got to make sure that you hold people to account, you hold people to a standard. And I'm amazed that anyone defended that man. Absolutely. So anyway, that's a lot. So feel free to just go at it, and we can just drill into wherever you want.
Well, I guess what I want to get to the core of is kind of where you find the contentions on the right and the left as far as Democratic Party and Republican Party go, where you find it necessary to vote in one way, where you think that's the way that I want to achieve my, political, legislative, ideological goals. Because at least for me, not a fan of the Democratic Party. Do I vote for them? Sometimes. Most of my voting is done in down ballot initiatives. Being in the South, being if we're going to use very broad terms, liberal person, my vote doesn't carry a whole lot of weight. But in down ballot initiatives, that's where there is a little bit more sway. In larger things like primaries and generals, my voice doesn't matter. So at least what I get out of voting for Democrats, it's not Republicans. Not Republicans, and there's a handful, 6 representatives within government that at least somewhat align with my goals. And all my goals is to get us to, maybe something like a Nordic model. Maybe something like that. And then we'll talk about the crazier stuff from there.
Yeah. So, what kind of makes me leverage? That's an interesting question. Number one, I think I already addressed that as far as like how we want to fix economic woes. Whether you agree with me or not, I hope you can at least understand where I'm coming from. Number two is that there are certain things socially that I do agree with Republicans on, although I think they're the most ass-handed about it. Right? I do think that CRT is generally bad. Now, it's not that I'm over like, oh, we should teach history better. I kind of get that, and that's how it's framed, but I don't trust a lot of the people that actually say they're for it in that regard. I just blatantly don't. Like, we can get into that if we need to.
About CRT or about
Yeah.
like teaching the history of racism?
Okay, so the problem is that for me, those tend to go hand in hand. And just to kind of give you an over synopsis of it, do we do a bad job teaching history? I think we do a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, but like as a general overall example is like at least when I was growing up, we were taught about slavery. We saw the fucking pictures with people with scars on their backs and whatever. And don't get me wrong, if you're from the South, I get it. The South is not like the North on this.
We
right?
I don't know if you guys, like, every state has like a state history class that you take like before you go to high school.
Mhm.
Mine, Louisiana history, painted Confederate flag on the wall. It was called the War of Northern Aggression,
Yep.
and every textbook was not about like abolition. It was about how it was terrible what was done to the plantation owners in the South. How they had to take their families and go to Texas. They had to leave. They were refugees. That's the kind of teaching that we were given.
I believe it, and I've heard this many, many times. So for me, overall and personally, at least from what I understand, and what I've heard, does the South need a lot more work on this? Yeah,
Absolutely.
they've got, I don't know what the word is for it. They've got some kind of,
The Daughters of the Confederacy writing legislation and putting
yeah,
books forward.
It's not just that. What's the cause? The lost cause doctrine. They've got that's been ingrained with them, and it literally has started since 1876. Like it basically as soon as as soon as that happened, to where the North pulled out troops and the North largely let former Confederates back into political power. In the South, it was just pretty much over. We had sharecropping, Jim Crow, all that shit come back. Or not come back, but was instituted, and we had to deal with that all the way up until the 60s, and even now you still have reservations and holdovers from that. So I'm gonna be really shitty to my Southern friends here, but yeah, like y'all dragging this fucking behind, and it's pissing me off because there is a difference between a Northern Republican and a Southern Republican, and I wish Northern Republicans would speak up, but they're kind of minorities now, and they need to not be, especially here in the Midwest.
Well, Northern Republicans, we just call those Democrats.
I'm not really on board with that, but okay.
That's okay. Well, at least on the CRT thing, look, my wife's a teacher. She, in the last couple of years, has gone from different grade levels: high school, middle school, elementary. Never once was like CRT or like Ibram X. Kendi or whoever else. I forget the other person's names. What was their name? Ta-Nehisi Coates, I think, was another one of the names that gets thrown around with the CRT debacle.
There's one of them that I need to look through my YouTube history on, because I'm literally going to do a video like talking about things that she said and how they're incredibly racist and cringe. That I'm actually like putting a video together on, because I don't get me wrong, like there is levels to where people do not remotely understand the history of Black America. They don't. Absolutely. And we could teach certain things better, absolutely. But on the other hand is that I see narratives, I see things that I openly don't trust, and I'll openly go into the memes because I think some of them are real. I think a lot of it is breeding a culture of white hate and white guilt, to where you have to be ashamed if you're a white person, or you have to hate white people because of the history of what they have. And I'm like, look, guys, here, like, I'll compromise with you. White people have done some horrific fucking shit throughout history, and even in this nation, but they've also done some amazing shit. Like,
I don't get the guilt thing. So here's my like main contention. If a reasonable person that I'm talking to, and I think you're one of them, can probably agree, CRT, like the post-grad, very esoteric, like elective law program of CRT, not actually being taught. Is there maybe an essence, a framework of looking at like historical context and like things coming into like contemporary society that a teacher might be able to like explain to a student? Does that maybe have some roots in that theory? Possibly. But my main issue is, okay, what is being taught that you have a problem with? Like specific examples of like, I want to see assignment sheets. I want to see like at least a lesson plan that shows me something that is saying we are teaching kids that white people are inherently oppressors, people of color are inherently oppressed, and that you should feel guilty about that. I want to see that because I don't.
Mm-hmm. So I want to parse this out because there's a level where like I can't give you exactly what you're looking for, but I want to give you at least the anecdotal evidence that I have.
Okay.
Are you correct that like CRT officially is only taught in colleges? As far as I'm aware, you're correct. It's like postgrad or not postgrad. Excuse me. It is elective courses.
I believe it's post-grad.
I don't know if it's postgrad or not. I've heard that they've gotten it into like.
Yeah. Regardless, it doesn't matter.
Course, but yeah,
it's college level.
So, yeah, it's college level. So on that part, at least so far, we're agreed. Now, there is a conversation about maybe moving that into high school from what I hear, but that might be a lot more Republican fear-mongering than it actually is true.
Mm-hmm.
I can't cite that out because the media is fucking terrible on both the right and the left.
I would be fine if it was in high school, like a junior or senior level, but I would also want to see like media literacy programs, critical thinking, things like sociologist. I would like to see sociology be like at least somewhat mandatory, or philosophy programs, something along that lines. But I can make the arguments that at least like CRT should be part of a program.
Oh, I piss off my fellow righties on this one a lot, but I would love to see more philosophy going all the way back to like elementary school. And because the reality is, and I think people don't understand what philosophy is. It is the questioning of why things exist, how we relate to them, and what is the meaning and purpose, not only in like what we do in our own lives, but what we do as societies, institutions, and these are very important questions to the human condition. And philosophy is the conduit in which we go about that. Now, do I overly love philosophers? No, they tend to be like liberal and progressive as hell, and whatever. But on the other side of that, I think you still have to open that door.
Yeah. I mean, the great Greek philosophers said that the ability of man to think beyond himself is the greatest thing that they can do, and the pursuit of that is as close to godliness as you can get.
I'm not 100% familiar with that one, but I do like this. If I remember, it's Socrates who says the unexamined life isn't worth living.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that. If you don't ask yourself the questions why, if you don't allow yourself to grow in the manner of tempering your ideas and tempering the things that are given to you, then yeah, I mean, you're living a hollow life and a shallow one at that, or at least for me. So I think a lot of us, or I think we largely agree on that. Rewinding back to CRT is that when it comes to, I got to remember exactly where I was going to go because I forgot to write it down. When it comes to what curriculum is put out there, you said like, hey, I want to see like a class assignments, whatever. I can't give you that, but what I can give you is a little bit of anecdotal evidence, and you can take this for as much salt as you desire, is that there is a lot of people who are younger that are coming up that I can ask, and they can tell me about all of these horrible fucking things that this country did, which we did do. Like, I'm not knocking out like it's fake history. But then they can't tell me the good things that this country did. And I'm just like, all right, cool. How many people died fighting the fascists back in World War II? Like, how much blood did we spill to try to liberate the world from that fucking threat? And they're like, what year did the United States land on the fucking moon? Like, Jesus Christ, we literally went to another astrological body. That is a massive accomplishment, whether you look at that in, like, no matter what framing, I think, no fucking idea. Like,
do you think that's solely a consequence of like education, or do you think that maybe there's some social and cultural elements to like the conclusions that they might come to?
I hate to pull this one, but I think it's an Ouroboros. I think they're all wrapped up into the same thing, right? Is that you have social pressures that go into the political structure. The political structure affects the education. Education affects the social structure, right? So it kind of all feeds back into itself. But I'll put it this way: I'm not going to be like, oh, it's conspiracy. But what it is that there are a lot of people there that think that we do not frame history in the correct manner. And they want to make corrections to that. I don't have a problem with that in general. Do I think that they're overcorrecting or going like too far in one direction? Yeah, I do. So
Well,
that's kind of where I am with that.
Here's my take. I would agree that many students can hyper focus on social issues, particularly when it comes to like the treatment of like people of color within this country and the history of that, how we treated the native population whenever we first arrived here, how many students can hyper focus on that. And this happens on the left a lot, that we solely focus on how we are failing, and we tend to forget where we have strengths within our institutions that we can not only rely on, but that are good. I'm not necessarily one for like leaning on the Constitution. I don't think that like legality is a substitute for morality, but there are many things about the Constitution that I appreciate. You know, you and I being able to have this conversation and openly dissent, I really appreciate that. You know, there are people in other countries who don't have that luxury. You know, there are people in Turkey who can't openly speak out against Erdogan. You know, I appreciate that ability for us to engage openly. Ability to like protest. You know, there are aspects of being an American that I do appreciate. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. That's why I'm here. That's why I haven't gone anywhere else, because I want things to be better. But hyper focusing on the negative is something that everyone's going to fall into, especially whenever you're younger and you're starting to recognize more and more because of how social media works, our access to information now. You're going to see people fall into that kind of despair of, oh my God, everything's like messed up. Society is collapsing around us. Our economy is in shambles. Our climate is literally going to kill us, especially, you know, if you're in areas where you can see it. So I'm not surprised when kids are more focused on that and less focused on, you know, the good.
There's a level where I'm not surprised, but I think it's a little bit for different reasons. I think people are desperate, and I think people are running out of hope that tomorrow can be better. Because if you know, I was having this conversation last night with some folks. When's the last administration that we saw like massive cohesive change? Well, we can make arguments that each administration has had significant changes in policy that have affected the lives of every imaginary or every imaginary everyday citizen. Excuse me, I can't talk.
That's okay.
You know, Trump with the tariffs, the ACA under Obama. You have the Patriot Act under Bush. You had
Crime bill.
The crime bill and the repeal of Glass-Steagall under Clinton, and then you get all the way back to the Reagan administration. But most people look at like the Reagan administration, like that's the last time we really saw massive change. And actually, I think most people don't even agree. I love the mug, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I don't even think most people in the modern day agree that like most of Reagan's policies actually turned out to be for the better in the end. But like, I think that's what everybody's looking for, is that they're looking for a president in a political party that is going to completely reshape the narrative, not only in how Americans view themselves and how we approach it, but also in what the direction is forward. And I think that's really where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why we keep seeing these ultra hyper competitive elections where it's 52-48 nationally overall, and at least in a general sense, is that Americans just are not on the same page with this. And part of that is the fact that civility and common sense politics is broken down to where this conversation doesn't happen not only online very often, but even in our IRL spaces, is that they're getting more rare. Is that we're getting incredibly cliquey, and that is not a good thing. You need people to keep you in check. You need people to keep you in balance. And you know what? While I lean right, centrism's pretty fucking based. You need common sense, compatible reforms that work not for everybody, but work for most people. And you only get that by compromise. You only get that being like, all right, dude, I don't agree with you on this. I don't agree with you on this, but let's hammer out something here so you can get a little bit of what you want, and I can get a little bit of what I want, because this shit sucks. And we haven't done that.
Well, I think I'm certainly not going to be out here saying we need to compromise with the Republican Party. I'm sorry. You're not going to catch me saying that. But
fair enough.
If we're talking about the tribalism that's, you know, manifesting now, that we're becoming more and more partisan, everybody's like we're doing team sports left and right. My honest take, we can call that back to the breaking up of labor unions. There is something about when you are part of a union in your workforce regardless of how people vote within politics, regardless of their political leanings, you're there for each other because you're workers, because you're, all interested in the same thing. You all want a steady paycheck, you all want food on the table, you want shelter, and you don't want to be overworked. When unions started dissipating in the U.S., that's where what we see now started to take root. And I think the great delusion that we see in our time is thinking that because we elect Donald Trump or because we elect Joe Biden, that things are going to be better. And they're not. They're simply not, because one person who's blue or red is in the office. Until there's actual labor momentum on the ground, we're not going to get the things that we want. That's what I think.
So I'm actually not 100% against that. I don't have a problem with unions, actually. I'm actually pretty pro, and it's part of that balance of power thing that I've talked about, is that working class people don't remotely have the balance of power that they used to.
Mm-hmm.
I get why people were very anti-union back in the past. Like, they were deeply embedded with the mob, and no one really wants to have a Jimmy Hoffa incident over again. But that's not really where we are now, right?
That's not where we are, and that's not necessarily where we were. That's a very esoteric moment in time.
I won't engage with that.
That's okay.
I'll just move on to the next part. Here's the part where I'm going to expand upon. I don't think it's just left-wing institutions that have really gotten hurt. It's right-wing institutions too that help basically maintain the gravity. I'm a liberal in the sense that I believe in personal freedom and responsibility. Part of that is building institutions that do the work on your behalf. Unions are fantastic, but here's other things that have gone to shit that people don't have anymore, or are basically on their death rows, that used to serve the public good in a way, but don't anymore. Your church groups and your religious organizations, whether you want separation of church and state, which I do actually believe in, is that people got together, they congregated, they talked about shit in the same way. They built a community around their churches and their religion, and you would have religious leaders literally work on the behalf of people to get policy, whether you agreed with it or not. You had organizations like the League of Women Voters that would do this. They're largely gone now. Rotary Club, all of these things that you can find all the people who are above 60 still doing. There's no young people there. There's no people who are even in their 40s doing this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And we've let all these things atrophy, and that is the genesis of real political change. Is that it doesn't don't get me wrong, you have to be a part of something to get things to move,
mm-hmm.
but there's a structure to it. No man rules alone, and you have to build out the organizations and the support, grassroots, whatever you want to call it, to get the change you want. You need the apparatus. You need your union. You need your church group. You need your academia. You need whoever the fuck it is to come in and back for you. There's only fucking 3 major institutions now that are actively involved in our politics. Number one is fucking big money and corporations.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with corporations, but when they're the only people there, of course they're literally getting away with everything.
Right. And so I'm just going to assume, Citizens United, you don't seem to be for that, right? Because the outsized influence of money in politics is the root of what we're talking about here.
I'm not going to say that I 100% am on board with it.
Come on.
Okay, hear me out here. All right. So my problem is that I can say, all right, hey, corporations, we're going to hard cap you. You can't put that much money in it. I think that doesn't really solve the problem in a way, because what we really need to do is that we need to equate that balance of power in some kind of way where it's hey, look, unions, you've been dead. You're not putting in the effort that we're not able to have unions do the drop where, hey, the corporation just dropped $1 billion on, funding this political campaign. I know that's hyperbolic, but that's where I'm going. We don't have unions that are on the same page being we can match you fucking blow for blow. And we should. Absolutely. We should have unions that are as strong as the corporations. That's the entire point of those institutions, is they are there to work on your behalf. They are there as a counterweight to those corporations, so that so the government doesn't do it. And it's actually one of those things you praise about the Nordic model. It's one of the things that they do right, is that their unions are so strong that if the corporations get on a hand, they just fucking slap the shit out of them. Now, does the government play overly handed in that organization too? Yeah, but they're probably always going.
Okay. A compromise, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, Tiberius and Gremloe, are in legislation. We bipartisanly unite to reform Citizens United. Corporations can engage in the political process through donations only if it is unionized or if their union votes in favor of it. Thoughts?
So I'm just gonna go over this in my head as a practical thing. Um, a corporation can actively engage in the political process if it has a workers' union that can counteract it. Is that largely what we're going with here as a mechanic?
Well, that only can they. So let's say
Mhm.
Halliburton, Raytheon.
Okay,
Let's
sure.
say if they want to give campaign donations to a given candidate,
Mhm.
only they can do that if the union of Raytheon or Halliburton agrees to do that. They say,
I
you
think
know
that-
what, this candidate, we like him. He's saying some good shit. He wants to bring more jobs in this area, in our industry. We're going to, do a donation.
I think that one's going to be a bit of a stretch, or at least that's not an equitable compromise to the right. I think the equitable compromise, whether you agree with it or not, is that they have to actually have a union
Right.
of scope to participate. And I think if you want to take that compromise where it's like the union doesn't have to sign off on it, but the union has to exist. It has to be sizable portion of their workforce, let's say 60%, something like that. If you want to take that compromise, I think we can deal with that.
Okay. Interesting. Because the alternative is none of them have a say. None of the people at that company have a say in where that money that they're literally creating is going to what candidate and how that candidate's policies and legislation are going to affect them. Because that's what we currently have.
Technically, like, we're supposed to have that, but that's not really the case, right? Is that you've got super PACs that are just dropping massive oodles amount of money, and yeah, technically it might not be the corporation that's dropping the money, but it's their shareholders, or it's
Mhm.
their it's their owners that are largely able to do it, and then so it just largely goes hand in hand, which is why like people like to say, oh well, I don't want the corporations being involved. I think that literally just makes it mask on, where it's like, all right, cool, the shareholders are going to work in their place. And I don't really think that solves the problem. What you need to do is you need to actually have it there where you have something to counteract that. Cool. Corporates wanting to go this direction, you've got the workers wanting to go this direction, and it counteracts each other. Or at least they can make a compromise where it's like, hey, look, if you don't spend money on this, we won't either. There's integral ways to play that. There's different models. The Nordic model is one of them. The Japanese model is another, which is actually very interesting. Um, but anyway, long story short, there is that I'm more concerned with the fact that I think a lot of these policies tend to like just mitigate one problem into another, and that's kind of where I go with that.
Okay. Interesting. So, talked about CRT, talked about kind of like Union and Citizens United. Is there anything else that's you find like maybe like within the Democratic Party specifically, or maybe even like the small contingent of like progressives that you find you can't just align with that, like your hard line on it?
Twitter's been blowing up about this recently, so I'm going to hit it, even though like
Okay.
I've got a really nuanced take. I morally align pro-life. I'm actually pro-choice, but that's because I have two conflicting principles, and I think one of them just wins out, right? Um, when I see these folks that act like abortion's no big deal, like I fucking almost want to go authoritarian, right? Just on that, like it is morally fucking repulsive, repugnant. I'm not on board with that shit. But on the same time of that is that I do believe in freedom, responsibility, which I've said many times before. And if I were a woman, and I'm going to put myself in a woman's shoes, the world's not perfect. And if I were to get pregnant, I want that choice to make that decision.
Based.
Be all end all. Because look, I like here's the reality. No one's aborting their kid at fucking 7 months. It's not a thing. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Very, very rare, and it's like medical complications.
Yeah, and most of them are all in the first trimester anyway. You can put the 20-week ban in there, and I'm not gonna bitch if it fucking happens. I think Texas is taking it too fucking far.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's like, oh hey, cool. This state put a 20-week ban in. I'm not gonna cry about it. I'm 100% okay with it overall. But a lot of these, what is it? Most of them are all before 30 weeks anyway. right? So, like, yeah, I can take the fight on, but like, honestly, I think there's a level that the left's rhetoric is true, is that it is, I'm not going to say anti-woman, but it's distrusting of women to the point where it treats them that they don't have the agency, the moral responsibility, and aptitude to make the right decision based on what they're.
I think the word would be infantilizes them.
I don't know if that's the right word, so I'll just move along with it.
That they can't make their own decisions, as they shouldn't, that if they made a mistake, they shouldn't be able to like take responsibility for it, that kind of thing.
To some degree, there is that, and I'm not going to walk away from that. There's blatant, like, I mean, some people just blatantly call it sexist, and I'm not like going to go overboard and be like people who are pro-life are sexist. I think that there is serious moral complications here that we do not have the words to literally iterate to one another. That is going to be an absolute bastard when it comes to our politics. But in the overall sense is that I know where my principles are. I recognize that they clash here, and I have to pick one. And I do believe that I'm not going to write off women. Oh, they're immoral. They can't make the right decision when it comes off to that. I'm going to give them the choice.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound like that's too much of a hardline issue for you. I mean, at least like you conceptually understand like the pro-choice argument.
I understand both arguments, and it's not that like literally it's one of the most tearing things for me because morally and ethically, I think abortion's terrible.
Oh yeah, I don't like it, but right. I mean, it's not up to me.
And the fact that Republicans haven't categorically wiped out abortion as a thing, I can live with. But I'll make this clarification. One, I'm really pissed off with them that they set up the infrastructure bill in the way that they did and then didn't sign off for it. So I'm really pissed off at them as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But we're about to have the Supreme Court rule on the Mississippi abortion law, right? And there is a lot of people saying that Roe v. Wade could go. If that happens, not only would I expect the biggest blue wave in history to come fucking sweeping in, but on the other side is that I probably will vote Democrat because of that. It's like,
so,
look. Yeah.
Here's my take. That's not going to happen. Roe v. Wade's not going to be overturned. It's a wedge issue. I hope
you're right.
It would be stupid of the Republican Party to do that. It's literally a wedge issue. It's something they use as a means to gather support within their like most fervent, like, evangelical or reactionary base. Like that's something they use. So if they just throw it out, we don't even have to make the argument anymore. Well, not really anything for them to come out for now, is there? Why do you think Democrats are constantly saying like, oh, well, we're going to bring health care and we're going to bring jobs back. And then when they get into office, they don't do shit. That's why. Because they want somebody to vote for them, but they have to give them something to vote for.
There's a level where I get what you're saying. And there's a level where I kind of think that it's overly nihilistic a little bit. But here's where I'm at. And we don't have to agree on this.
Okay.
I think there's some truth to that. There's always the politician doesn't really want to solve anything because he can run on the same thing the next, literally the next election cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And he can act like, hey, I tried, I just couldn't put it through, but we still support your values. But I think the Americans are tired of this, or the American public is tired of this, is that they are now looking for a party, whether it be Democrat or Republican, that says, we believe in this and we're going to fucking get it done. And here's the reality. I think the Republicans, the party, recognizes that, and this is one of their big fucking issues. And do I agree with you that it actually would be stupid? Yes, but for not the same reasons. I don't think that they're gonna be like, oh well, we can't run on it anymore. They're gonna literally go to their voter base and say, we fucking did it. But I think that they don't understand that the blowback's gonna be massive on it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the Republican Party is in the minority, like both populist wise and like polling wise. Like one of my things with the Republican Party is like, what policies are you honestly pushing? Like what genuinely like beneficial policies are you pushing? So if they were to do that, if they were to overturn Roe v. Wade, if they're actually going to pull the trigger on it, which they're not going to do it under Biden for sure. Yeah, there would be a lot of blowback, and they would definitely lose the next cycle, and then everyone would remember that Democrats suck, and then they would come right back.
So yeah, I think we largely agree on that. Are they going to pull the trigger? Like that's the real question. I can't make a definitive claim, yes or no, because you said it was stupid, but the Republicans have been incredibly fucking stupid the last 6 years. I'm not gonna lie. Like it bothers me in the regards that like they have they open up amazing doors for opportunity. We as the Republicans have brought in 10 points of people who make under $30,000 a year. So apparently, we have a message, we have a rhetoric that is bringing not only a more economically a different class of people into the party, but also we're being more diverse. We're having Hispanics flood into the party as well.
Yeah.
So there's room to grow there and there's room to change. And I'm like, hey, look, we can actually get a more right-wing working class party that I think would be great. Because I'll put it this way. I wasn't a huge fan of the old Republican Party. There was a part that I really liked about it, even though I was young and I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but as I've gotten older, I really have. And that was we are the professional people. We are the people that are, you know what, we're going to be the police officers. We're going to serve in the military. We're going to do all that kind of thing because we believe in civic service and in being involved in our communities and protecting them, whether you agree with it or not. These are same people that went off to the FBI, became the officer corps, what have you. The problem that the other side of that party had was that almost every time that their financial backers came, which was Wall Street, is that they got what they always came first. I don't care for that because the more moral centric virtue people of the party who actively believed in things that I really do, I appreciate and care about, just wouldn't buckle the fuck down. And if they were going to buckle down, it was always going to be like on pro-life or unfortunately hitting on gay people because they just couldn't get over that. So in a general sense, it's not great. But if you get something that where Wall Street isn't the number one priority for the Republican Party, that opens up a shitload of doors for the Republican Party to be an effective instrument of change for the majority of Americans. But if you've got people like Donald Trump running it, then it's probably not going to work out very well, is it?
It's so fascinating hearing you say that.
Mhm.
We were talking earlier in the chat today about so you and I are like the same age. So we grew up like the post 9/11 era. That's kind of like when we mentally, clicked on. I was telling my chat that the crazy thing about Trump is that he is a Republican. He's the perfect Republican because he made people comfortable with being a Republican. This suit and tie, like, we're the distinguished gentlemen, we're the reasonable people in the room. Like, yeah, that's what you and I grew up with, during like the Cheney and Bush era. We're going to do the same exact Republican playbook, but we at least have an air of civility behind us. And Donald Trump just made people comfortable with being themselves, just being Republicans. Because look at his agenda. Tax cuts, deregulation, increased defense spending, increased drone strikes by 413%. I know you're not a fan of Trump, but I'm just riffing. He just made people comfortable with the culture of being a Republican that was kept behind like that, lens of civility. And now it's in the forefront. It just is what it is. And this idea that like the Republicans used to be this, that civil-minded, we're behind closed doors, we're, in the pocket of Wall Street. Yeah, that's just Democrats. That's
Okay.
just what Democrats are. And there's like I said, it's like 6 people who are like, no healthcare, no roads, no education. Like, that's it. So, I don't know. I just don't see, like, I don't really see a big distinction between the two, other than now, in the last 5 years, the Republicans are just, comfortable.
So there's a level where I absolutely agree with this, and there's a level where I don't. When it comes to the framing of like how the Republican Party and the Democratic Party is, I largely agree with that. Like the wheels have almost fallen off for both parties, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're having competitive elections is that people have hopes and dreams, and they're willing to vote for them to get them through, and even that they're actually increasing their voter share. So people really seem to care now, or at least they seem to care more than what they did. On the other side of that is neither party is grounded in what it wants to be and who it's going to be in the future. And it's time for this. And I talk about this on my channel. So I'm going to shout out myself to your community for a second.
Of course.
There's a video I got. I'm going to update it before too long. It's called The Party Systems. And we talk about how like the first through 6 party systems is that politics change. Things change. The issues change. Demographics change. The issue of the day changes, or literally like labor balances change. And so you had like the fourth party system that is built out under FDR. That is literally the Democrats are the most pro union people you could possibly have. They're literally the American Party of Labor. And then you move into, I'm sorry, excuse me, that's fifth party system. Sorry, messed it up. This 50 party system, the six party system largely starts with like LBJ and Reagan to some degree. Like it starts at one point, ends at another. I'll put it this way. Reagan largely mobilizes people into like Christian nationalism into the right wing party. Largely is like, hey, look, we're the party of big money, religious values, and
Yeah, America first.
America First really is not Republican, or at least not old Republican. I think this is
Well,
actually
that was his campaign slogan.
Okay, it is and it isn't. I mean, technically, I think like overall it is America First, but it was a completely different doctrine to see what like a MAGA. And I'll put it in this regard because I want to parse this out. Reagan was a neocon. Reagan loved free trade. Reagan was there at the height of the Cold War, where it's a knockdown, drag out global fight between the United States and the Soviet Union. The doctrine's completely different. What MAGA largely is something that's a lot more insular. Whether you believe it or not, it's a lot more American isolationist. It's like, hey, look, we did our job. We defended the world from fascism. We defended it from communism. It's time to come home, and it's time to look after American interests first. And I think there's some constructive things that can be had from that, especially when the Euros are largely just riding out on where we're at. But in the overall sense is that free trade is not something that the newer Republican Party likes or wants, and that is completely antithetical to the Mitch McConnells and the Ronald Reagans of the old Republican Party, and that is changing 100%. And I think that's one of the big reasons that you're seeing this group of under 30K a year people flood into the party is because whether it helps them or not, I'm not going to get in that economic argument, but the rhetoric is there and the mentality is there that things are changing, that we're going to actively reinvent our priorities. I think the Democrats are actually doing this too, but most people that are looking at where you are going to hate where the Democratic Party ends up as well.
I think there's certainly room for improvement. I think after win or not, after the success of the Sanders campaign in 2016 and, its subsequent not success in 2020, there is a robust movement of people recognizing the errors in the system, wanting things to be different, seeing our comparable OECD nations and like what they have and seeing it as almost utopian. I think the general sense of the Republican Party is that, the Democratic Party, the voters at least, are seeing a more progressive push. It's just our obstacles is our own party. Much like people in the Republican Party voters that want to see things go in a certain direction where the momentum is going. The resistance is in those last few bastions of like blue dog Democrats and like old guard Republicans that don't necessarily want to see that final push.
So there's a level where you're right on that one, and I agree with most of that. Here's where I think things are going to line out and what the seventh party system is going to probably end up being. Seventh party system.
Okay.
Is what this will be. And I literally think that started back in 2015. We're not fully into it yet because this usually takes about 12 years to cycle out, and we're like in year 5, right? Year 5 or 6. Anyway, let me iterate where I think that these parties are going. I think that you're right, that there's a lot of people in the left-wing populists that hate where the Democratic Party is going, and they're trying to make changes. And if you look at the Progressive Caucus, at least in the House, it's pretty large. I don't think it's the majority yet, but it's getting close. As far as the overall party is concerned. You're having a lot harder time in the Senate. I am afraid that you guys, I don't know if I'm afraid, but I'll put it this way. If you're looking for a Democratic Party that wants that I think that you want, from what I understand, is that you're probably shit out of luck. And the reason why is that most of the establishment of the Republican Party, the people that were big corporate, big money folks in the Republican Party, most of them actually have left, even with the Trump tax cuts, because they don't like the way that the Trump administration behaved. Like, cool, you can say you're law and order, but if you have an insurrection under your watch and it looks like you instigated it, you're in the wrong party.
Yep.
And what we've largely seen, particularly under the Biden administration, is this is the most pro-corporate Democrat administration that we've ever seen. And I think what you're literally going to see is you're going to have the super elite party uh, becoming what the Democrats are, where you're going to have what used to be like the right wing aristocratic capitalistic class that is the administrators that run all the shit, paired with like the social activists of academia, where they're going to be the quote unquote elite blue collar party versus the Republicans are going to be a right wing populist party. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'll suffice it to say this. Unfortunately, the populist branch that's going to probably win is the right wing. What I'm far more concerned with and why I want to be in that fight over here on the side of the aisle, above all else, is that I want that to be steered well, because we've seen what happens when economic working class and hyper nationalists get together, and it doesn't paint a pretty good picture if it's not managed and handled.
Yeah, I think there's merit to that idea, because that was what got Trump the presidency in 2016. A terrible candidate coming from the Democratic Party, but a populist, or at least one that uses populist rhetoric on the campaign trail in Trump. And populism sells. It really does. Even if your words ring hollow, you playing to the woes and concerns of the everyday working man, that's going to get you more votes. And I think, honestly, the Republican Party is better at stumping than the Democratic Party. God forbid, God help me, if Buttigieg and Kamala Harris run in 2024. I might actually say don't vote to my audience. Like, just don't do it. Let it collapse. Let the Republicans win. It's the quickest way to let this thing burn down. But there is something to be said about, the lack of care in engaging in populism coming from the Democratic Party.
There's a level where I get you, and there's a level where I don't. I gotta show my biases here, so we'll have to pick this one apart. I'm not a huge fan of Harris, and it's because like she's just way too comfortable being a hypocrite, in my opinion. I'm a lot more reserved when it comes to Buttigieg. I think he's got some ways that he can prove himself, but number one, he's a fellow Hoosier, and I'm gonna give an olive branch to my fellow Hoosier until he really fucks up.
Is that what people in Indiana call themselves?
We're Hoosiers, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are the only state that doesn't have like state Ian, right? We literally have a special name. We're the only state that does.
What does it mean?
So there's a whole conversation with that. I'm glad we get to derail in this, but no, it's really simple. No one's 100% sure where the term comes from exactly, but there's two big thoughts. Number one is that it comes from the olden days with the Ohio Territory and the founding of Indiana, is that when people would greet each other, because they're basically coming around the corner, they had that southern drawl or that mountainous Appalachian drawl when they were integrating here, and they would be like, "Who's share?" As in who's there as a greeting, and it turned into Hoosier. The other one was that there was it was a work community or work camp that was built out for a bunch of people that immigrated in like in the early 1800s, who called themselves the Hoosiers, that largely built out smaller communities in southern Indiana that became relatively known and popular, and they all started referring to each other as that. I'm going to go with the former on that one. I think most likely what happened is that it literally just became a dialectic clique where it's like, hey, the greeting, it literally became a greeting unto itself, kind of like, hey, how you doing? And then it turned into a moniker.
Interesting. Okay. All right. We don't really have anything like that.
Indiana history for you, right?
Yeah.
So
Buttigieg, though, interesting.
I don't. I'll put it this way. He doesn't strike me as overly deranged. Now, you can disagree with his policies all damn day. I'm not like super huge into him, but I don't think he's an idiot. He speaks 5 languages. He served in the military. He is. I'll fire off the diversity one. He's gay. He's married husband, committed family man. I'll go with it. I'm 100% okay with this guy.
And when I look at Buttigieg, what I see is white, gay, CIA, Obama.
I think he's got like a balanced approach, and I could be wrong here. I really want to see what would happen when this guy can actually write legislation, because he's literally a mayor, right? And now he's like
of
Secretary of Transportation,
4th largest state or city in Louisiana. Like, at least get some actual like policy, like good policy under your belt. Like, I don't know. Buttigieg is so cringe. Like
Fair enough. All right.
Buttigieg makes me want to jump in lava in Minecraft. Like the thought of him being the leader of the Democratic Party, like, all right, enjoy the W, Republicans. Have fun.
So the thing that I should have done, let me double check this real quick because I don't think you could have done.
You have high hopes for Buttigieg 2024?
Do I, or are you talking to your chat?
I'm just memeing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh no, you're good. I don't have hope for him running. Actually, I've been talking to a few Democratic insiders, and this may make you want to puke, but it looks like Biden's gonna.
I mean, it'll be very funny to see Trump and Biden back on stage together.
Like, unironically, it looks like we're going for a rematch. I hope we're all wrong, but Jesus. Like,
I'm ready. I want Dylan Burns to host the debate.
That's going to be memes.
I just want to see Biden be like, cage match, Jack.
Well, I mean, that's basically a cage match as it is. So anyway, the thing that Buttigieg really should have done, but I think it would have rubbed a few people the wrong way, is that South Bend is in the 2nd Indiana Congressional District. There's no way he's ever was going to win that. But if he had moved into the 1st, it's a very blue district, and he probably should have ran through that to get himself on the national stage to show, hey, look, I can write policy. I'm going to be more involved. Because I think he ran for I don't think he ran for Senate, but he ran for like a statewide office, and he got fucking smashed because Indiana's red as hell. Like, I was amazed we went blue for Obama. We didn't even go blue for fucking FDR. Not in all 4 elections. We didn't go blue for FDR, right?
Interesting.
So, yeah, red as hell. It is kind of the moniker. Now it's gotten a little bit bluer over time, but you're not going to win a general election like that, being where he. So I think he really should have pursued a different avenue, but he's kind of barred, unless he has to make some serious sacrifices where he's going to pick up and move to the 1st congressional district. He's going to sit there for long enough to actually where he can run for it and then do so. He's literally just got to jump a whole level up to national. And you know what? He came in with some pretty fucking big dick energy. And I've said it, and I know a lot of people don't agree with me on it. I think, honestly, if you had it gone down to the fact of not having Obama make backroom calls to get Buttigieg and Klobuchar and all the other folks to drop out to back Biden, it would have actually gone down between Buttigieg and Bernie for the nomination.
Yeah, 100%. Because he was the only one that managed to, like, kind of get Iowa. Kind of not really. It was down to a coin flip. But, yeah, it would have been down to those two. Bernie would have, like, smeared him on the floor. But he represents, like, everything that is wrong with the Democratic Party. Like, everything. Like, identity politics, just, like, very pro-corporate, very pro-imperialism. Like, he sucks. He sucks so much.
If you want to frame it in that regard, I'll back off and I'll say you're probably right. But, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I don't know. This was an interesting conversation. Anytime that I look at these debates that happen within this, space, it's very rare because of how, what was that?
You hate yourself after a quick minute? Like,
I mean, I'm numb. I'm pretty dead inside. So,
okay.
But because of, like, what this space is and how it attracts, like, a certain amount of brain rot, like, having someone who's at least reasonable on the right is hard to come by. So, it's at least nice to, like, talk to somebody who's, may not agree with a whole lot of stuff, but, is at least tolerable.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel the same way. Like, I'll put it this way. I get into righty circles, and, like, literally during that panel, which I don't think you were done reviewing, like, there was a point where, like, CTV is just like, you're not really on the right. Fuck you. And look, I get it. Like, I'm not right enough for the right, and I'm not left enough for the left. It's just basically how it boils down to. But
we were going over the left-right dichotomy earlier today and how it's complete bullshit. like every American is just an amalgamation of like contradictory like beliefs, but I think you're more at least grounded in your worldview.
Well, I appreciate that because that's kind of hard being grounded, especially in the world in basically like the free media spin zone and all this
Yeah,
other
it's
shit.
very hyperbolic.
It's very hyperbolic. A lot of this shit doesn't make sense. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just being completely honest. Like I have seen Republicans and Democrats flip on issues solely because of the people instituting them.
Mhm.
Like Republicans are like, hey, look, in the foreign wars, you know what? This is why we voted for Trump. And then Biden does it. Oh, well, he didn't do it right. He didn't do good enough. Fuck
Yeah.
Biden.
Yeah.
You got what you wanted, assholes. This
Yeah.
is what we voted for.
I have a very Republican family. Like I got QAnoners and stuff, and I
I'm so
just
sorry.
did not. It's all good. It is what it is, man. The Afghanistan thing just like blew my mind. It's like there's no getting out of a 20-year occupation or just war, whatever you want to call it, where it's gonna be good. Like there's no positive outcome. You can minimize the the externalities as much as you want or can, but it's gonna be bad either way. And they just could not wrap their mind around that.
I'm 100% with you, man, and it just pisses me off because that is one of the issues that 100% I sit there and go, this is where we're actively and openly super partisan where we shouldn't be.
Mhm.
This is literally what the right has been claiming for, and like literally, at least what I've seen on particularly in the Twitch space, but even among the left, is that the left has actually become more internationalist. Has been like, all right, cool, we need to help out people, so we'll stick it out in Afghanistan. The left president leaves and the right's pissed off about it. Like, what the? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I swear to Christ. Our political system in a nutshell is completely off the rails. It doesn't make any
It
sense.
really is.
I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. I really do.
Yeah. I don't. When do you normally stream? Like what hours?
I don't really have a regular streaming schedule right now. The problem is because of school and classes is that excuse me. Because of school and classes, I largely work at night. So sometimes I'll literally be getting out at like fucking 9, 10 o'clock, and I'll be like streaming like as soon as I get home, and I'll be having fun. And then sometimes I'm streaming right now because somebody asked me to, or invited me, or hey, they want to hang out.
Yeah.
So I'm a little all over the place. But if you're interested, or I'll put it this way: if you want to chat with me, just PM me. I'll be let you know. The only thing that I have absolutely guaranteed, set in stone, is the Mask Off podcast at 9 p.m. Sundays. And that's with Counterpoints, my friend Osiris, Samantha, which is technically on hiatus because she got suspended. We've now fixed that. She's going to be joining us, I think, again in about 2 weeks.
You heard the man, chat. Give him a follow. Check it out. Well, the reason I ask is I have a very international audience because I stream in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the people I have are like Euro. One of my mods is in Japan. And they're like, this is so crazy. And some of them are like expats where like they came from America and moved to those countries. And there's like, it's incredible how wild the American political system gets and how it's just like radio silence sometimes in their political systems. Not so much Denmark right now.
I'll tell you what, the Eurozone politics have gotten very lively over the last 10 years. Don't get me wrong, like I studied Germany a lot, and I'm trying to like break into British and French politics a lot more. It's hard for me to keep up with French because I don't speak French. I don't understand French at all, and their political system's fucking weird.
Yeah, Mr. Geek was telling me about it, and I was like, what?
Yeah. The British have always been pretty loud. I mean, literally, it's Maggie Thatcher and like Tony Blair and all that shit, right?
Yeah.
So they've always been a little bit more boisterous than compared to the rest of the Eurozone. Germany has largely been dominated by more or less a centrist coalition for the better part since the early 90s. Like as soon as unification happened, is that they've largely adopted the Grand Coalition, which is a coalition between the CDU and the SPD. And that's largely dominated all the way up until recent days. And technically, they're wanting to go with a left-wing government right now. It's actually not even finalized yet. What is that? It's SPD, it's De Groen, and it's the FPD that are wanting to get together. And I don't think they've even finalized that coalition yet. Like Merkel's still technically in charge of Germany, and she stepped down a year ago.
Hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But like, here's the problem. I do on my channel, as far as what I do on my solo content, I do geopolitics. Europe is becoming an old folks home, and say what you will, I don't want to get in the ethno-nat memes of low birth rates, but here's the reality. Economic systems do require some level of consumption. That means you need young people to actually be there, buy the things, consume, buy the houses, the cars, all that shit. The Eurozone's running out of young people. There's not really a Generation Y, particularly within Central Europe. And if you get into Eastern Europe, they have a Generation Y, but they don't have any Zoomers because they had the post-Soviet birth collapse. So Eastern Europe is 10 years behind Central Europe, and Western Europe is only stable because of immigration. So anyway, where I'm going with here is that you're going to watch Germany, then Italy, then Spain jump off a economic cliff, because in 10 years, Germany has more retirees than it has working people.
Yeah.
How do you run a social democracy where people don't pay enough taxes to run the son of a bitch?
Right. Or, have a big enough labor pool. Those people are aging out. They're retiring. They're not able to work anymore. Japan's going through the same thing right now.
Japan's been actually going through that since largely the 90s. Japan had a weird thing. They've got a double dip to some degree. They had a actual pre-war generation that's now like in their 80s that still isn't dead because they have like the longest longevity of any country in the world. So like you've got like a shitload of people that are 80, 85 in Japan, but they had a follow-up cohort that's about 45, 50 right now. I'd have to double check my figures. I apologize. When they jump off the cliff, Japan will go off, will literally stop functioning as a political entity. I'm really interested to see what happens to Japan, because they're only coasting on the fact that they have literally a 1-for-1 ratio between workers and retirees.
Yeah.
But that only lasts another 15 years tops, and then they're done. And oh my god.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to watch.
The future, like I literally have a name for this. I'm eventually going to put a video together on it sooner or later. It's called Cataclysm. We're going to watch a lot of Eurasia literally just start going offline in the way that we see normal contemporary economics. And I'll put it this way: unless MMT and a lot of these new economic theories turn out to be remotely true, if the bare basics still are the only thing that's true, you're going to see Central Europe largely go into economic depression that it doesn't recover from for the next 30 years. You're looking at East Asia within the next 20 years do the same. Because, yeah, Japan is old as hell, but look who's right behind them: South Korea, Taiwan. And believe it or not, while this is 30 years out, China had the one-child policy. And even after they've lifted it, they've got millennials, but they don't have anyone who's younger. We still have a Zoomer. We have a Zoomer generation. They don't.
Yeah. It's I mean, not only the birth rate, but that's going to cause economic collapse. But once we see like climate change really start to take root, and we're seeing like climate migration, if you think the migrant caravan stuff is bad, we don't need to get into immigration stuff at the moment. But if you think like the politics surrounding our southern border is bad right now, wait until these countries are uninhabitable.
So I'll put it this way. I absolutely think global warming is real. We have to do some things about it. I'm actually in favor of a $7 trillion nuclear spending bill to actually transition to largely nuclear energy. So we can touch that at a later day.
Yeah.
But what I am concerned with is that I don't think it's going to be in the same way that a lot of my left-wing friends like to frame it. I think it's going to be like a slow rolling burn where we watch things get a little worse and worse. And what I actually expect is not that this place just floods and becomes inhabitable. Maybe Venice. Like Venice was probably going to get it deserted. And maybe Miami if it gets hit by a nasty enough hurricane, or New Orleans. What I'm far more likely that I think is going to see is that you're going to see like a scarcity for resources. Usually water's not one of them, but because of climatological changes where we're seeing water more in some areas and less in some areas, or in less in some areas, is that for the first time we might actually see a little bit of the water wars.
Yep.
And right now, as an example, you have two of the biggest countries on the planet, that is India and China, openly eyeing each other in a very stern light because China is starting to dam a lot of rivers in the Tibetan Plateau that feed the Ganges Valley. That's 60% of the Ganges Valley water supply within that, and it might be as high as 90, depending on what we're talking about. If you turn off somebody's water, that's literally a cause for throwing nukes at them.
Yeah.
This is India and China.
Yeah.
Scary shit. Not only that, you've got the Blue Nile project in Ethiopia, which is shutting off water to Sudan and to Egypt, and the tensions are high already. And that's not counting the fact that you have Eritrea breaking away, or at least Eritrea was technically forced out of the coalition. I'm not saying my words right. The word is Tigray. Excuse me. It is a province in with northern Ethiopia that probably should have went off with Eritrea. Anyway, the long story short here is that Tigray was a group of people that was part of the governing coalition. Basically, every province had an ethnic group in Ethiopia, and they had a grand coalition that kind of brought everyone on the table. About 4 years ago, Tigray was basically ostracized from the coalition. Problem. While everyone in the region largely hates the Tigrayans, is that they are the most competent fighting force in East Africa. And they've been literally fighting what basically is a low-key civil war for the better part of the last 3 years.
Jesus.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. I'm not a nihilist. I think if you're talking about like the United States and maybe most of the Western Hemisphere, we're probably good to go. But I am seeing about 7 major factors lining up that makes... I don't think the Eastern Hemisphere survives into 2030 without literally setting on fire. That's literally supply chains to, political instability to all this shit. Something's going to break. And once it does, it's going to be a knock-on effects where every other thing that's being held out fires off at the same time. And it's going to be scary as hell.
Yeah, I think it may be right that the U.S. may be more of a trickle effect. We may see like a boom in immigration, but not necessarily like, suddenly there's, 20,000 Chileans at the southern border. But areas in like the Mediterranean, Turkey is likely going to be at the forefront of that. Italy, once the equator areas of the Middle East are uninhabitable, we're basically just, I think, going to see something akin to what we saw with like the Syrian migration, the Syrian refugee crisis, where it's just thousands of people over several years are going to be migrating into these northern, like European and Asian countries, and there's just going to be nowhere for them to go. And when it comes to any immigration policy, you either turn up the violence or you try to be as humane and humanitarian as possible. We're seeing that with our southern border. We either can turn up the violence, build that wall, start, being more brutal or even killing people, or we can open up a pathway to citizenship. It's really kind of all there is to it, I think.
So, I know you wanted to avoid immigration, but I'll actually give my general outline here. Whatever the policy is in the United States really doesn't matter overall. Whether you are pro-immigration and you want a pathway to citizenship, whether you are for catch and release, all that shit, most of that doesn't matter. Most of what's going on in Central America is the push factors, not the pull factors. We're talking about Guatemala right now is the big hotspot where most people are fleeing from, and that's because their homicide rate hit 30 in the last 2 years. It's basically fallen into an era of social strife, and no one wants to live there. Like, put it this way. People don't pack up and leave their homes because they want to. It's seldomly ever the case.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the whole just move meme in a nutshell. People will do it, but they will do it when they feel like they don't have a choice. And that's what we're seeing largely in Central America is that there is not only political instability, there's economic instability that is going on within here. And if things get bad enough, people just pack their shit and go.
I mean, do you think that like our country and other like Western nations like involvement in the history of those countries and in some cases in our contemporary like policy, do you think like that might have something to do with it?
There's absolutely some degree where that is the case. I think the left overblows it to a large degree. And here's the problem that I have to like get into, and I'm working on. This is the video project that I'm working on. It's called "Where You Live Matters." Largely, my thesis is that I'm more of a geographic determinist. Doesn't mean it's absolutely going to be the case, but there are areas of the world that just don't are not conducive to building out macro scale institutions of economic and political strength. Central America, as a geography, if you will, is that it is largely tropical, it's largely mountainous, and it's largely, excuse me, tropical mountainous. And there's another thing there. I can't remember what the fuck it was. But these factors compiled together to the point where it's really hard to build roads. It's actually really hard to build buildings because the environment will literally melt them down. Not figuratively, but or not literally, but figuratively, right? Have you ever seen what happens when shit rains on you for 6 weeks straight?
I'm in Louisiana. I'm very aware.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
it's actually really expensive to build your stuff, and you have a lot higher maintenance cost.
Mhm.
And then when you have to blow through the damn mountain to get to the village over there, it's really hard to build out a macroeconomic structure. And so Central America, I don't have a lot of hope for as building a massive macroeconomic entity that is going to be stable into the longevity of the future.
I mean, it's an interesting concept. I mean, like many things, you know, I'm gonna both sides Andy this. I
Sure.
think that the history that many of those countries have gone through with like Western imperialism has set them back in a way, has made it, you know, very difficult to put down roots and build institutions that can at least yield sustainable, maybe not large scale economies, but at least ones that are sustainable. But at the same time, I have thought in the past, especially when it comes to climate change, that there are parts of my state where we may just have to say, sorry, we can't support this area anymore. Like, we're not going to start building more roads. We're not going to like improve those bridges. We're not going to build out infrastructure in those areas. You can't stay here. Like, there's always been like a discussion I've had in my mind of like, okay, like Grand Isle is an area. Why are we still doing that?
Give me just a second. I want to keep track of where we are here. Okay. I wasn't even familiar with that. Yeah. Fuck that noise.
You're looking at Grand Isle right now?
Yeah, I'm really big into geography, but I wasn't familiar with this. So Grand Isle is basically an isthmus just offside of the Delta, the Mississippi Delta.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it looks like Key West, but it's not even like good islands. It's literally
it's a sandbar.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're gonna get blasted by a hurricane. Like,
they do every year. Every year. And so little just brief history of me. I worked for an internet company in this state, and it serviced that area along with a couple other smaller companies. And every time there's a storm, houses are destroyed, roads are demolished or, you know, unpassable. And it's just, oh, well, we're just going to rebuild. Like, okay, why would the state invest in this at all? Why would we do any kind of infrastructure when it's just constantly destroyed? Not only are we allowing people to put themselves in danger because they want a weekend campground, but it's costing money. I don't know.
It's going to be a place that doesn't have a return on investment.
Yeah.
Right? It's literally just a bleeding hole. I'm just looking around the region. What is this? Fort Fortune? Something like that?
Bouchon.
Okay, yeah. That looks pretty important. I get why, you know, you don't want to abandon a port facility, but if we're talking about this particular highway here that I'm looking at, I would not build anything south of what is called Golden Moto on that road.
If you're interested in geography, you should look up what the real map of Louisiana looks like.
The real map.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel like that's loaded in some kind of way?
Louisiana doesn't look like it does on the map.
Okay, I can believe that.
Yeah.
It's ironic because like Louisiana is actually invested in all the wrong places. They've invested in New Orleans, which I get. It's the mouth of Mississippi, but quite honestly, the Mississippi should have been turned into the Appalachia or the Apple. I can't say this. The Atchafalaya River, I think it's what it's called.
Atchafalaya.
Yeah. there was a guy who like tried to build a canal, and he fucked it up and almost redirected the entire Mississippi down that river. Here's the thing. Actually, would have worked. Probably should have done that. Like the Mississippi River Delta is actually really long now, a little bit too long. But that's not the good part of Louisiana. The good part of Louisiana is the I-10 corridor and the I-49 corridor in a triangle with Lafayette, Lake Charles, and like it's called Valley Platte. But there's a triangle there in southern Louisiana that is inland enough where if it gets hurt by a hurricane, it's got to deal with the winds, but it's not going to flood.
Are you aware of what happened in 2016?
Which one was this? Because I'm thinking 2016 was where Houston got fucking nailed.
Houston did get nailed in 2016, but 2016, kind of like the greater like Baton Rouge, Ascension Parish, Livingston Parish area, were basically underwater for like more than a week because there was a storm that hung on over us for like 4 days, and then just flooded everything. And we've recently had to halt residential development in several key areas because the residential development, like these neighborhoods that people are putting up, is raising the land that they're building on, which is normally like where low-lying water sets and then drains whenever it floods. And that's just causing it to go into older, poorer neighborhoods.
I can totally believe that. And part of it's just where you live. Now, granted, I think from what we saw with 2016, most of the time when you get hurt with a hurricane, you're going to get hit with street rod winds, you're going to get hit with storm surge, but it's pretty rare when the hurricane just parks over you for 4 days.
Well, it wasn't a hurricane.
It wasn't?
No.
Okay.
It was just a storm that just decided to stop.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. But I did send you an interesting video that you can watch on your own if you're ever interested in seeing like why some things are the way they are in Louisiana, and it has to do with Cancer Alley, what we call like an 84-mile stretch of land where our petrochemical stations are. It's very interesting, but I don't want to hold you up for much longer. We've gone for, I think, over an hour, actually.
I'll check my timer here. We are an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah. I think that's plenty for today. I'm actually close to like calling it, but if you ever want to chat about anything, or if you ever like have a space on your Sunday show, and you want an idiot leftist to come on, you can feel free to invite me.
Fantastic. So Mask Off is actually done by request because there's a lot of people that want on, but it's largely just a first come first served basis. It's largely like, hey, do you got anyone who's going to be on? And I'll be like, all right, we already have this booked up. Or if you want to jump in, definitely like be like, hey, can you reserve me a spot? Sure. So I'm definitely interested in that. But Louisiana actually have been paying a little bit of attention to. You guys have got the I-49 project, which you guys are still trying to finish up. Most of that's now south of Lafayette. I did a lot of this during the infrastructure bill. So if you guys really want some extra nerdy technical shit, I talk about like the infrastructure bill, what's actually in it. And then so far the 6 major projects that I've done the research on as far as interstates. And I-49, if you're in Louisiana, is actually one of the major projects that is going on there. They've done most of the work. There's only the Shreveport bypass that they or not bypass. It's actually a through pass. They got to tear out like an entire neighborhood to get it finished, and that's about $600 million. But there's that particular project, and then if they're going to extend I-49 all the way down to New Orleans, that's another $1 billion, and $600 million of it is literally South Lafayette.
Yeah, Louisiana's not good at building stuff. I'm going to just put that out there. We're really bad at it, and we're really slow. And a buddy of mine who's
wrong spots.
What's that?
You guys just build everything in the wrong goddamn spots.
I know.
It's like,
I know.
You've got the northern corridor up on the I-20 area that is around a place called Monroe. Everything east of that in Louisiana, largely solid. It's a little bit of a floodplain, but it's actually really built out geographically.
Yeah, the problem is there's nothing in Monroe.
Exactly. But it's flat and it doesn't completely get wiped out by hurricanes.
Yeah.
Build out there.
Well, it would be nice if we were to invest, because part of what I was talking about with like, why are we keeping these areas afloat? Like, the Grand Isle area, like Port Fouchon, Cut Off. We literally have a place called Cut Off, and it is Cut Off. Is you need somewhere for these people to go. I'm a big proponent of super blocks. I would like to see us do that in like the EBR area, because a lot of areas need that because housing is an issue. But if we're going to build out, it'd probably be best to do it in like the Shreveport to Monroe area, and then that way we're more connected with Arkansas. But our port is in the pocket of New Orleans, so that's where all the industry is.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. If you're talking about the coastal facilities, I'm going to be honest, guys, you invested in the wrong place. Like that's Houston. Like that's where most of the petrochemical is, and like trying to double into that was a mistake.
Yeah.
And now, if you're wanting to handle everything going up the Mississippi River, okay, like there's a reason New Orleans exists. I'm cool with that. It has problems, but we can live with it. The problem is that most of the areas that Louisiana tried to develop is the I-489 corridor, which is not wrong. Natagulchis, as an example, Alexandria. These are not bad places to build out. Shreveport, as an example. But the actual best places of the state are the places that really are largely untapped.
Yep.
So yeah, these people need to hire me to tell them where the fuck to build.
Yeah. A buddy of mine is a civil engineer, and he's tried explaining to me like how our contracting out of these projects works. It's very big brain stuff that I don't understand. But from what I understand, the state has a right to go with the lowest bidder, and the lowest bidder doesn't have to agree to a timeline. From what I understand, that may not be the best way to put it, but that's how I understood what he was telling me. Like, you can go with the cheapest option, but they don't have a set timeline for when they have to complete it.
I'm not going to comment to that.
Yeah, I don't know.
What I can say is that when it comes to not like literally government contracting, whether it's municipal, county, state, what have you, I'm not going to say that's open corruption, but there's definitely times where you're just like, what the flying fuck are you people doing?
100% is.
If you, so I'll finish off with this final note, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're right wing, whether you're left wing, is that overall, is that if you believe in being involved politically, you have to keep your folks responsible. And if you're literally just having people that's like, oh, well, we'll eventually solve it, it's not okay. Get involved in your politics, get involved with what's going on, and hold your people accountable. Make sure that when you sign off on a project, it's funded, it's going to happen, and it's actually going to get done.
Hell yeah. And I'll do a yes and on that. Yes, they need to be responsible, and yes, they need to be accountable. I was brought up to believe in both responsibility and accountability, and that is what we have a supreme lack of within our politics.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. Someone in chat wanted to know your thoughts on the Republicans and their stance on CCMPS. I'll save that for another day because you don't want to get into that with him. But can we agree, final thoughts, on an age cap for representatives? Can we end the gerontocracy?
Oh my God. Okay. Final thoughts. That's a big one.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll put it this way. Do I think that most of the elected representatives in the United States are too fucking old? Yes. But I don't think that's the fault of the system. I think that's the fault of the young people need to show the fuck up and vote. Like,
oh, yeah.
You don't get your representatives if you don't show up and vote. Like, just basic calculus, guys.
Or run for office yourself.
Well, yeah, like, don't get me wrong. If you get fucking creamed, you get creamed. But you know what? It's better than just sitting here being a goddamn doomer on the internet, being like, nothing's going to change and we need reform. Well, if you're not going to get reform, if you're not in the game, you got to put your skin in, you got to make sacrifices.
Hell yeah.
As far as the geriatric committee, like, I've seen what it does in the military. And don't get me wrong, there's a point where I get it. But it's openly ageist, and my more liberal principles absolutely hate this shit. It's really hard for me to deal with because there is a point where you get so old that you're not capable, but I hate giving a blanket term on people where it's like, well, 65, get out. Or, 70, 75, get out. It's like, there are some people that absolutely deserve that chair and they can be 80 and I'm fine with it. There are some people that should never be in that chair and they're 55. That's the responsibility of the voter, in my opinion. We need to be smarter about who we elect and why we elect them. We need to stop electing the Donald Trumps. And while I'm about to be really partisan against my friend Gremloe here, we need to stop electing Bernie Sanders types too. We need to go a little bit more towards responsible, rational government. Let's fucking go, boys. And then I'll leave with that.
All right. Good stuff, buddy. I appreciate you, stopping by on short notice and talking to my little heathens in here.
Oh, this was absolutely fun, entertaining. I love the one-on-ones.
Yeah.
There are very few times that I don't like one-on-ones. The only thing I'm going to request from you is that if you've got like a professional picture that you have that I can post up for my thumbnails, that would be great. Please send that to me.
Sure.
Because I am absolutely going to put this one on the YouTube because this is fun.
And if you don't mind, I'll do the same.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I'll send that one off to you here in a second. But anyway, do you want to shout out yourself to my community and then I can do the same for yours?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm just Gremloe, Gremle, or spell Loe on Twitch. We do news and politics, and it's probably a little more lighthearted than what Tiberius does, because we try to have fun. Leftist, first tenet of leftism is no fun, so we're trying to break that mold a little bit. But yeah, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
All right, fantastic. So for anyone who is in the Gremloe community, my name is Tiberius D. I am kind of the super nerd, right? I'm a very technical guy, and that goes from everything to geopolitics and studying like how environment affects your stuff to the infrastructure bill, which I've covered recently. But I'm also a massive nerd personally, too. I love my Star Trek. I love my Star Wars. I did a massive review on the character of William T. Riker very recently that if you want to check out, you're very welcome to. Like, is Riker a good officer? What do I think of this character? Feel free to check that out. I do basically all of the nerd things. And so if you want something that's a little bit more refined, technically sophisticated, that's me. I'm not really the whole like super drama arc. Let's go, boys. But if you're looking for something that's a little more big brained, a little bit more relaxed, definitely come and check me out there. And as far as streaming is concerned, I'm a little hit and miss. We're trying to get something a little bit more standard, but the good news is everything that I really like usually ends up on the YouTube. So you can always just check out the YouTube channel and you're going to find the best and brightest of whatever I tend to involve myself with.
Nice. Did you like Dune?
Haven't got to it yet.
Okay.
I hear it's a lot like the 1980s, 1984, 1986 one?
1984 was David Lynch's, or Adam Smithy was what he did his pseudonym under. But very good. I would compare it to like an art house version of the 1984.
Interesting. So the last thing that I was watching, I know we've already done our outros, but
yeah.
Last thing that I was watching, I just finished up the remaster of Gundam Seed with the new dub from Funimation. I'm a pretty big Gundam fan. It was quite interesting to see the difference between the Ocean dub back in 2004 versus the Funimation dub that just came out. That was quite interesting.
Really? A Gundam fan?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. You and I are going to be good friends.
Absolutely. And then right now I'm currently watching The Bad Batch. Dave Filoni's Star Wars thing about the Clone Force 99. I'm like 5 episodes in. I'm enjoying it so far, but Dave Filoni's fantastic. And I would be very, very happy if he ends up becoming the director of Lucasfilm. Please make it happen. Let's go.
He does need to be. If there's anybody that can like take it in the correct direction, it's him. Him and Jon Favreau are excellent minds for that. It's like the same thing with the new Dune. Denis Villeneuve, the new director, he made this movie for himself because he's a Dune fan. And I think that's the same mentality that Dave Filoni goes into it with.
I largely agree with that. I'll put it this way. Dave Favreau is definitely a good Star Wars fan, but I don't think that's his genius. I don't think it's just being Star Wars. He's really good at starting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Remind you that he's the guy that helped start the Iron Man and really like paved the way for their phase 1 of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Is that like he really helped boot all this up. And so I'll put it this way. Favreau is fantastic at just getting the ball rolling, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and putting you something that you can take in further on. And The Mandalorian has been absolutely fantastic. I've enjoyed it very greatly. It's opened the door to Ahsoka and all these other programs that we're going to be seeing. And I would love for Star Wars to recover from the sequels. That's going to be great because Disney let it burn, and God damn it.
I have a take on the Star Wars movies that you're probably going to hardline disagree with it.
Uh-oh, here we go.
You ready?
I'm listening.
Last Jedi's the best one.
Okay, we're ending this conversation. Have a nice day. Anyway, I think you threw that at me on the last panel that we were on. So yeah. I'm just gonna say no.
We'll have a conversation about it at a later date.
Fair enough. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure being with you. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Have a good one. Oh, fuck. I didn't promo the cooking stream. Shit. He brought out Jon Favreau, and I was like, oh, speaking of Jon Favreau, we're watching Shift this Saturday. At 4 p.m., we're starting a cooking stream, and then we're doing a double feature. God fucking damn it.